Time is on my side. I didn't sing it. I spared everyone listening. I'm sure you could do it better. But the song Time is on my side is a key factor to, I'd say, this episode. But anyway, welcome to the Mostly Pilot Night. Mostly, I'm Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 80 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. So what happens when you can't just escape evil? Who can you trust when it can look like anyone you know? How do you escape a threat that can survive death? Join us as we delve into the world of changeling horror. So try to smile, pick yourself up after you've fallen, and remember, it is always following you. So, in case you can't guess by the hint, we are doing essentially we're calling evil transfers. So when people are able to, or entities are able to transfer from host to host. So it's usually demonic. It is some sort of STD in this case, or evil entity that is never fully explained. So we have Fallen, which is the best place for this movie that we could ever think of in any episode. The 1998 Denzel Washington movie. And the time
this
recording,
might be our first appearance of Denzel Washington.
It is. And I while looking up some information about this movie, it premiered on this day 26 years ago.
Wow.
It's just like, oh, that's pretty good circumstance. We have It Follows, and yes, we know that we will be doing They Follow at some point in time, and it'll just be a catch-up episode. And then finally, Smile, that came out in 2022. I think was very underrated, and most people do not give enough credit. And they are prepping for Smile 2 as well, which I think is coming out in 2024.
Yeah, I know we talked about it on our best of for 2022. I think it was on both of our top 5.
Yes, it was. I think I'd have to look it up. I think it was in the top 3 for both of us. Hellraiser was number 1.
Right.
I'm pretty sure X was our number 2 and Smile was our number 3.
X was on your list. I don't think it was on my list.
Well, we know Pearl was on the bottom.
Yeah, Pearl was definitely not for sure.
So yeah, like I said, we'll start this off with Fallen, like I said, 1998, Denzel Washington, and quite honestly, I had never heard of this movie until discussing it with Salem here, and it is an underrated, kind of forgotten movie because you don't think thriller / horror to be Denzel Washington. I think of the 90s, and I'm thinking rom-coms. And I guess some like whodunits or thrillers, murder mysteries, but not like or demonic rating, because he generally plays a pretty straight-laced guy or an angel, I think, in something. I don't know. I don't follow his career too much.
Who, Denzel Washington?
Yeah.
No, I mean he does a lot of stuff, but he does mostly like drama, crime drama, gangster drama.
Yeah. So like I said, we'll do that, and we'll get into it here. Like I said, I'll just say this off the bat. It was pretty good. Was it long? Yeah, but you don't really notice it. And I actually had to look it up too. It takes place in Philadelphia. I thought it was New York for some reason.
Well, big city. That's all you really need to know. It doesn't reference any like locations.
Yeah. But it could have been Chicago with the overhead trains that they had going. So, but anyway, so we'll get into Fallen here. Like I said, it is a 2-hour and 4-minute movie. So it's still on the longer side. And essentially we are introduced to a serial killer played, I don't know how to say his name, Elias. Elias Codes. Yeah. AKA Casey Jones from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. Being executed and getting the gas chamber, which I'm not sure I've ever seen a gas chamber in a movie. I've seen other forms of execution.
There's been a few. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't name them, but I know I've seen it before because I know I've seen like the little pellets that are in the bag drop down in that like water or
Hmm.
whatever, and that's where the gas comes out of. I've seen that in other.
Yeah. Like I said, it seemingly so out of place. Like the wife goes, "What? Why is there smoke in there with him? Like he's the gas chamber." I'm like, you just don't typically see it, which you think would be like one of the easiest things to do. Like, oh, throw some dry ice into some water and it'll get smoke, and then boom, gas chamber. But anyway, we are introduced to him. He's seems in pretty high spirits for being executed. He's talking to the detective played by Denzel Washington, and he's like, this is I caught you, I did it, and then big witness group, and I'll say this right now: for being an entity that is thousands of years old, he is stuck with that one song in his repertoire. "Time Is on My Side" by the Rolling Stones, to the
Well,
point where it's probably I feel like it's the only song on the soundtrack.
I mean, yeah, but he did it. He's doing it because the song has meaning to him.
Yes.
Meaning, like, I can do whatever I want. I'm immortal. Time is on my side, but it's also like an earworm. But it's also something for you to tell who is the bad person is because they always whistle or sing that song. I mean, because obviously, if he just like walked away
Yeah.
and went to a different town, no one would ever have any fucking idea where he is, who he was, or what was going on. But no, so in order to make the movie, like the point of the movie, you have to be able to identify him.
Right.
Therefore, that's why they do that.
Right. And he is later revealed to be speaking Aramaic. And eventually they bring in like a forensic investigator to kind of listen to the recording that was going on there. And then kind of what happens is you see, I would say the best way to describe it is the evil Deadite entity from Evil Dead camera movement for a clear transference of something. At this point in time, we don't really know what it is, other than seemingly it's possession. Um, so there's been a couple murders that happened because of this transference that we learn later on. That they're being killed, in similar enough ways where Denzel Washington and his mustachioed James Gandolfini, I don't want to say his last name, and John Goodman and Donald Sutherland go, okay, this is information that no one else had. With the information kind of being a couple letters being on their carved into their chest. The same, I think it was even the same hotel room. The guy
Uh,
was killed in with the syringe that they find.
basically, it all boils down to um, it's the same method.
Hmm.
They're killed with poison. They're all
Right.
killed with the same exact poison in the same exact way. Their bodies are all naked and in the bathtub.
Yes.
He sets up the his breakfast, which is like a bowl of frosted flakes with the milk in the box, and he sets it up in a very specific, precise way so that it exactly matches each scene.
Hmm.
And then he leaves clues written on the wall in the same handwriting, but they're different like clues to lead to like who knows, like they don't know what it means.
Right. And
Um,
essentially, it's this. It seems like it's just either like I said, either a copycat or someone that is just fucking with them at
Right.
this
Yeah,
point in
but
time.
there's like different fingerprints that they find in the different scenes, and then like they find like one guy's fingerprints is in the next guy's murder scene, but he was the victim in the other one. It's like it's all again, it's a bunch of shit that doesn't make any sense unless, of course, we know what's happening.
Right.
Right, an entity is moving from body to body, but look at this from a procedural police point of view.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. Like this guy is using information that was from the other serial killer that no one else knows except for the police, which is why they think a cop is the culprit.
Right, and that's always the thing, especially when there's evidence and stuff that no one else is supposed to know. That in today's world, can you necessarily get away with that evidence? It's always seems to be kind of like the indicative trope is that it's always points to a cop because they purposely leave things out of newspapers, which is inspired by real things that happen, where they purposely left stuff out of the newspapers to see. I think it was the for the Zodiac killer, right? They're trying to see if he knew
Well,
information they left out.
they do that. They've done that for a very very long time. I mean, hundreds of years. And the reason why they do that is because if a case gets big enough, people will come in and confess to it just to try to get a little bit of fame.
Right.
And so they hold little bits back. So if a person confesses and gives them the things that they're holding back, then they know that's a real confession. If
Right.
they're giving them just the same crap that was in the newspapers,
Hmm.
and they're not giving the correct, details that they held back, they know it's just a false confession, which happens all the time. Like you look at like the Black Dahlia, if you know
Yeah.
the Black Dahlia,
Yeah.
like they had, I don't know, 20, 30 false confessions.
Right.
And there's supposedly still stuff they're holding back that they know, that none of these false confessions gave the correct thing on, which is bizarre. I don't know why people would confess to a murder they didn't commit, but I mean, whatever. People are weird.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. And so they kind of they bring in a linguist to talk about the language they didn't understand. He's like, I've never heard it spoken out loud. No one's heard it for hundreds of years. Well, it's Aramaic. I'm sure there's some people that speak it, very little people that speak it, but I'm sure there's still some people. They
There's
also
not.
uh,
Just so
dead
you know.
language. Um,
I mean, it's like Latin.
yeah,
Latin is a language that's very commonly used in academic circles, but no one speaks it.
right.
It's the same thing.
They kind of like I said, I don't know if it's at this point in time, but they also realized that oh he threw right-handed, he batted right-handed, but he was using his left hand for everything.
Right. And they also figured out that every single killer was also left-handed, even though the people were normally right-handed.
Correct. And that's just kind of leads into police procedural. um Eventually I think that I don't remember how he gets in touch with Greta, the detective's daughter.
One of the clues is like, what's between um Lyons and Spukowski. And then he's like, what does that mean? But anyway, that was something that the guy told him before he was executed. And then at the first crime scene, it was written on the wall. And so then when he's talking about that clue, Gandolfini was like, oh, I don't know who Lyons is, but Spukowski used to be a cop. And so that's when they
Ah,
went down in the basement and they found that big, like it was like a sign of like,
yeah,
police that died or whatever, remembrance wall. And
yeah,
you look at all the lists and there was Lyons and then a space, like some like the name had been ripped off, and then
right,
Spukowski. So then he had to do a bunch of research to figure out who that was, and it was this guy named Milano who had the same kind of thing. There was a copycat killer who, like, the guy was dead. The original killer was dead, and there was a copycat killer that did several other murders. All of the evidence started pointing towards this Milano guy who won, like, cop of the year, whatever the award is.
right,
He was like a great cop. And he knew that that was happening. So essentially, he went out to a cabin in the middle of nowhere and shot himself.
yeah,
They covered it up saying, oh, no, he hurt, accidentally misfired cleaning his gun, to clear his name. Greta was his daughter. So he was trying to find more information on why he was giving him the clue to look for this Milano guy.
okay,
And that's why he ended up hooking up with her. And then that's when he found out she was taught theology and she was obsessed with angels.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. I obviously, as I was distracted a little bit while watching this
That's
movie.
dude, yeah. This is a movie that I've watched 100 times, so it's like
Yeah,
I
my
have
first
no
time.
problem filling in. No
But
problem.
anyway, she does, gets into, kind of a theological debate with her. She eventually does, he does make his way to the cabin where her father was and finds a whole bunch of occult-ish books in the cabin, and was able just to wipe clean paint with paint thinner really damn
Yeah,
fast.
I don't understand how that happens. Like, if you pour paint thinner on paint, you're going to remove all the paint, not just the top layer of paint. Like, that's not how paint
Correct.
works.
This is a water-based paint, and it
Right.
only does one layer at a time. So
Well, and the funny part is that the name written on the wall was the same color paint as the paint he was taking off.
yes,
So it's like, I don't think you realize how paint thinner works, but hey, whatever works.
no,
Wait,
but
so
they find
he gets the name of the demon,
Azazel,
which is
Azazel,
Azazel, and then he gets a bunch of like books and background information about references to Bible passages talking about you know uh, fallen angels that come to Earth that are cursed to not have a corporal form anymore.
right,
And so they're forced to live inside the bodies of humans because whatever there was the war between angels and humans, and the angels try to kill all the humans, so now they're forced to be human. is their
Right.
punishment.
Yeah.
So this person is supposedly one of the fallen angels that's been jumping from body to body to body since the dawn of man.
Right. And then yeah, he realizes that he's like, oh, they're passing hands. They're able to kind of touch each other, and he does then Azazel does torment the crap out of Denzel, just like taunting him with like every single person, even to the point with people in the police station. Kind of goes in there and just like passes around people all around him, and just like holy shit, like
Right. Yeah,
and then
and
he's
then
singing the
he
song "Time Is on My Side," and
right.
he goes to each person. They're like, "What the hell?" And he runs out and just has like a conversation with them, and like essentially a legion, essentially just instead of multiple beings in one body, he's going to one person at a time, but doing like a daisy chain effect of it and just taunting the shit out of him.
Right. Well, I think the worst part of the whole thing is right is that he takes over somebody and then moves on to somebody else, and they really don't have any memory of it happening.
No,
Like their
zero.
brain just like fogs it over,
Yeah,
and then just like they continue on with whatever they were doing.
right.
And that's like the one guy who he took over, who he had been with for days. Like later on, like he was like, he calls into work and he's like, oh, I don't know what happened. I think I got really drunk or something. I don't remember the last couple of days. Like, when's my next shift? Like, oh, you quit. What?
All right.
Yeah. So like they don't remember what's going on, but their brain like tries to rationalize what happened.
Right. And I don't know if it was ever explained, but they the Elias shook his hand. He was not able to possess him for some reason. I don't remember.
They don't really go heavy into
I
that, but
thought,
when he's talking to Greta in that courtyard,
yeah.
they discuss that some people are strong enough of mind that he can't directly just take them over.
Okay.
And those are the strong people that are supposed to be, and remember how she was talking about how she's like one of the strong ones that's supposed to be able to fight back?
Yeah.
That's what she meant. There are people
Okay.
that can resist them being taken over, but that they also said that if he dies because like whatever his spirit comes out of that body,
He's
he
stronger.
he
Yeah.
becomes a lot stronger because then he's fighting for his life.
Yes,
So
he
like he
has a
can take
breath, which
over.
is 30 cubits, they
Right.
said.
Yeah, so like he can take over a person that can normally resist him in that form because he's like, that much stronger. I don't know how that works, but they specifically say that.
Yeah, a single breath. Yes.
Right. Yeah, so they
Um,
say that
yeah.
so they basically say that, saying like even though he can't get to you by touch, you still have to be careful because if he dies near you or if the body dies near you, he can still get into you if you're close enough.
Right. There is, yeah. And then, he talks about, his nephews, like he comes home and his brother's like, oh, I got punched in the eye. By who? His nephew. What? And then he goes out there and clearly, the nephew was possessed at some point in time, then became into the other kid. And he starts chasing the kid down the street, brandishing the gun. Then he eventually transfers into, we find out later, to be a school teacher and then starts shooting at him and he shoots and kills him, which, yes.
Right. Well, yeah, he deliberately sets this up
Yes.
because the gun
As
had blanks
blanks.
in it and the car was stolen.
Right. But there's no way
So,
a cop is going to know that
well,
information
oh
while
yeah,
being shot
absolutely,
at.
absolutely. Which is why his friends are like, it was clean, man. You got nothing to worry about.
Right.
But obviously the higher ups, because all of this evidence around these murders is now starting to point to him, just like
Because
it
as a
did for that
cop.
Milano guy. Right.
Right.
It starts to point to him because this all attaches to him. There's no way this dead guy could be doing this. It has to be you.
Right.
So yeah, basically he's getting blamed at this point. The arrest warrant goes out for him, and then he has to like escape.
Right. After he finds that his brother was killed with the same poison, he takes his nephew. Is like, all right, we're out here. Go into a hobo town for the night a little bit, then goes to Greta's house. Like, okay, get born by the fire. You're just outside by a fire, but okay. um, she's like, okay, you know what this means, right? Yes. And I'm like, what? She just someone she barely knows. Like, yeah, I'll take care of your nephew for you, but okay.
Well, she
Um,
knew what the fight was.
yeah,
And earlier when she had the opportunity to fight, she ran.
Right, and he
And
did
so
the
she
daisy
knew she
chain.
wasn't strong enough, and she knew he was. So she was more than willing to help him.
Right. But daisy chain of people trying to get up to her, and she eventually gets into, the cap.
Right.
So anyway, then Washington goes to the cabin and calls him in and say, "Hey, I'm here. Just come by yourself." It's his police chief, played by Sutherland, shows up, and Jonesy, who is, you know, John Goodman. John Goodman then proceeds to shoot Donald in the head, killing him. I was like, well, it's just us now, because Denzel was hoping there's only one person that would show up. I think he was hoping it'd be Mustachio uh, James. you know,
Well, yeah, he didn't know who it was going to be, but he
right?
knew that whoever showed up was going to be him.
Yeah, and he'd been partner with John Goodman for like 12 years or something like that. He's like, I know it's
Yeah.
not you, and then he shoots him. The struggle for the gun. He shoots him, John Goodman, in the gut, and as he's dying there, he starts smoking cigarettes. He's like, you don't smoke. You're right. I don't. These are laced with poison. From my understanding, you only have a single breath, and there's no one else out here. You only have, I think it said like a sixth of a block he's able to go. It was a really short distance.
Well, I mean, you think about how long you can hold your breath and how far can you
Yeah,
move in that time period.
right.
That's the range that he has.
Yeah. So anyway, then he shoots as after he smokes the poison. He shoots him, Jonesy in the head. He's like thinking he won, but he was able to get possessed. But his only option was a dying body. And he tries to, when he got there, he threw the car keys into the woods, into the snow. And Azazel's trying to get out of there, but he can't. And when we realized, when we had narration at the beginning and kind of during the film and at the end, you think it's like a noir stuff. And no, it was Azazel. Like, remember I said I almost died? Well, there was a cat here, and he gets into the cat.
Right.
And then he goes back, and he can't really die.
And the cat thing is not like a total surprise. There was a scene earlier in the movie where he did possess a cat.
Yes.
So it is like an acceptable thing. I mean, the likelihood of a cat being there is probably pretty fucking low, but
The
whatever.
likelihood of a cat making it that far, the body would freeze to death, it seems like.
No, I mean, domestic cats can survive in the wild pretty well. Have you ever seen them in Australia?
Oh, they're the size of tigers now.
No, they're just regular cats. Like
Yeah.
regular cats, they're so numerous in the wild out there that they're actually part of the ecosystem.
Yeah. But finally we get a new movie by the Rolling Stones playing at the end. So
Well,
time is on my side.
a different song, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Anything important I missed out?
No, you're
Either?
fine.
Okay. I'll just go into my first thoughts. This was a brand new movie to me. I was surprised by it because, like I said, it's just something I didn't ever think of Denzel Washington doing. And like I said, I don't know, other than you, anyone that's ever heard of this movie or seen this movie. Um,
I got a lot of those up my sleeve.
but I was pleasantly surprised. It was a procedural cop drama, but with the the evil entity that is able to transfer bodies, and it's interesting that they they use the song as the physical time change, or the certain whistle or a certain tick that someone would have. It's always just that kind of show and tell a little bit, right? It's always some giveaway when it's a entity that moves from body to body.
Right.
What are your thoughts? What was your first thoughts when you saw this, or if you remember, or on your subsequent rewatches?
I honestly don't remember the first time I watched this movie. I know a friend of mine turned me on to it. I mean, this is in the 2000s. At some point in time, I don't
Mhm.
know. We used to trade movies back and forth. I used to give him sci-fi movies to watch. He used to give me horror movies. And it was one of the movies that he had told me to watch, and I watched it, and I really liked it, and I watched it, pretty often since then. But it's one of those movies that you don't really see anywhere. You don't see on cable. You don't see like
No,
anybody renting it. You don't see like no one talks about it. It just I always remember it because again, like the time on my side is a very iconic thing. Like every time I hear that song, I think of this movie.
Right.
So like, yeah, anytime I'm listening to classic rock, that song comes on, it's like, oh yeah, I should watch that movie. I haven't seen it in a while, so I've seen it a bunch of times, and I always enjoy it. I mean, it's not the best movie out there, but it's a good.
I fear that this got lost in the end of the '90s demon movies. I think that's kind of what happened.
Probably.
You know what I mean? Because from '98 to 2000, essentially, we had all those. Every horror movie seemed to be end of days type things.
Well, because everybody was scared of Y2K. Everybody thought the world was going to end.
Right. And I think this movie is one of the better ones from that era. There are some really shitty ones from that era
Yeah.
that came out. But yeah, it was like I said, it was interesting to see, and it was damn hard to find to watch some too.
I mean, I think I have it on DVD. I don't think I have it on Blu-ray. I don't know if I've ever found it on Blu-ray, but I'm pretty sure I have it on DVD.
Did you get it on Laserdisc?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe. Well, that's a fairly modern,
Right.
modern for me thing, just the last couple of years. But yeah, I'm almost positive I have.
Do you want to start with your highlights?
Sure.
Yeah.
I really like the noir storytelling of it. It's kind of like like a private detective kind of like narrating over it. I mean, it's
beat
really
cop,
told
yeah.
in a very noir style. Like it kind of comes and goes. It's not like that all the time.
Right.
It is like at certain points it cuts back to like that noir style storytelling, and I like that. I think it adds a little bit extra to it. I really like the song, like how the song fits into the movie, and how it really gets stuck in your head. And again, every time you hear that song for like the rest of your life, you're gonna think of this for sure. I mean, the mystery of it is it's a fun mystery case, right?
Mhm.
There's lots of like clues and stuff, and we see what the bad guy is doing on the other side of it, but of course it doesn't make logical sense, and they're trying to make logical sense out of it.
Right, because he's spelling apocalypse out on the victim's chest.
Right. But also it's like it's interesting because it by definition, it definitively in this movie's world proves the existence of God, right?
Yes.
But it does not hammer that point. It really is like it doesn't heavy-handedly tell you like God is real. You should do what God says. Like a lot of movies do.
I
Um,
would agree with that because usually then he become the weapon of God.
right.
Character would.
Right. Like he'd go to church and and pray, and all of a sudden he's got an aura around him, and like, Jesus will
Right.
come and save him at the end or whatever. Like normal movies that do this kind of stuff, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Right. And this one, there's a point in the movie where like he definitively says, like, this means there is a God.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, fuck that.
Cool.
He's like, well, where the hell has he been this whole time? It's just an interesting take on it, to where like you definitively get the oh yeah, in this world God does exist, like this stuff is real. And then Denzel Washington comes back, well fuck him.
Right.
Why would he let this shit happen? Like that, what
Yeah.
the hell kind of God is this? It's just an interesting conversation. It's an interesting way to look at it. It's not normally done that way, and I think that's why I like it a lot. I like the ending, of course, because it's a bad ending. You think it's going to go bad and just everybody just dies, but at least that's kind of good, right? Because they got rid of the entity. No,
Nope.
entity gets away. Whole thing is pointless.
Yeah.
Cycle starts all over.
Very pointless.
Right. Which is fun. I mean, I guess they could have had a sequel, but obviously it did not do well enough for that.
It did not recoup its
No.
budget.
No. And the other thing I really liked about it is, okay, there is a cop shooting in this movie, and it is a huge fucking deal, right?
Yes.
Every other movie, there's a fucking cop shooting. The cop fucking walks away. Like maybe he has to go into like a therapy session the next day, like one therapy session the next day, and then it's fucking done. This one, it's like, it is a huge deal that this
Right.
shooting even happened. And that's what realistically in real life, if a cop shoots somebody, no matter what the situation is, it's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And this movie really like shows you like, yeah, it is. And like all these cops are everywhere. Everybody's getting interviewed, people are going, well, what the hell? Well, it was a clean kill. All these, witnesses say it is. And it's like, hey, we still got to investigate this whole thing. Like you can't just walk away from this.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's fun. I did I do like that about it. But that's it. That's all I got.
The cast is amazing. I was expecting Denzel and no other name in there for me to recognize without researching too heavily into the movie I haven't seen. But I'm like, wow, there's decent names in here. Like I was very surprised by that. To the point where Greta is you know, the chick that Ash woos in Army of Darkness. I immediately recognized her.
Mhm.
I think Denzel did great. I think John Goodman nailed it as always, I feel like. And
Yeah, there's not many movies that I would say John Goodman did not do a good job in. I think he does a fantastic job in just about everything he's
maybe What Women Want about the Martian, but that's about it.
in. Yeah, I don't. I don't. Wait, no, is that the one with Mel Gibson?
Uh oh,
What Women
sorry.
Want? Yeah, that's Mel Gibson and Helen
Sorry.
Hunter.
What planet are you from?
What planet are you
With
from?
Gary, he played the dickhole politician in Iron Man 2. Yeah.
John
Uh
Goodman?
John Goodman was in that, but he played a cop because he plays cops a lot. But Gary Chandler or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was an awful movie, and John Goodman did not be in that.
Okay,
No, like I said, the cast was good. Like I said, I agree with the it wasn't the okay, there's God, now eat this Bible and you're gonna jam it down your throat until you get it.
right.
Um, and you agree the shooting, like, yeah, like, do I necessarily blame the cop for getting fired at, not knowing it was blanks? No, no one's gonna think that.
Yeah, no, I mean, he gave him like 100 chances to put the gun down. I mean, like he did everything
Right,
right as far as cop shootings go. There was no fault there.
right. But it's still in turning your badge and gun. Like we're investigating you.
Right, right.
Um, and evil won. Is that everything was pointless. No, nothing good came out of the sacrifice that happened, and that is kind of the theme in this episode too. Is evil wins, hands down.
Yeah, in these movies, yes.
you know, and I think even at that point in time, had we seen this when it came out, it's still a refreshing thing. It's still a refreshing thing now. Now, is more evil winning in horror movies? Yes. But in the 90s for evil win to not have that happy ending, I'm surprised they allowed that. Because the studio's interference in horror movies are still huge at that point in time. Maybe they got like, okay, if Kevin Spacey can win in 7, okay, I guess a demon can win. um That's what I got. I'll just roll into my low points. I mean, yes, the cat was kind of that Deus Ex Machina for Evil Twin. And you're right, they did show it up and kind of foreshadowed it. It's still like I'm not saying that Evil shouldn't have won. There should have been like some other loophole he was able to find. Um, I I didn't realize that his Denzel's brother was supposed to be handicapped. I did not get that at all from that movie.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's on my list too. And like, really, like, I was trying to figure out, like, he's got to be acting handicapped, right? Like, he has to be. There's no way he's just this bad of an actor, right?
Yeah,
But then I'm like, okay, he's got a
and
kid though.
right. And
Like, he's
like,
got a kid, and it sounds like he had a wife,
yeah.
and then like it just sounds like he was like down on his luck, and then he was just living with his brother because he was like, needed a place to go.
See, I took it in the movie. I took it as Denzel was living with the brother because he had a place to go.
No, I knew that the brother was living
Well,
with him. Like the
okay,
brother and the son were living with him, and Denzel's wife left him
right,
because of that. But
yeah,
I didn't. Yeah, it's like I was in my head. I'm like, wow, is he just this bad of an actor, or is he supposed to be like this bad? Like I couldn't get over it. He's not in very many scenes, but yeah, like he is not good in those scenes. Like even
no,
if he's supposed to be like acting as a handicapped person, really is not selling that.
Right.
It's a weird in between place. I don't know what was going on with that. There was no point to it,
No.
so
That's
I
like
don't.
it's a
Yeah, they didn't explain anything. They didn't like say what was going on or why. But
no.
I guess you could gather that from it. I don't
I
know.
did not gather that until I looked it up because he goes, Sam hit me in the eye. And like he seemed ashamed to say it. And that's why I'm like, this feels off.
Well, I mean, okay, like he could have been like, like a guy that got maybe his wife was like, went crazy, or maybe she like died or something, and he's like, messed up about it.
Yeah.
So he's like kind of emotionally broken. To when like
Yeah.
he could easily be taken advantage of by a kid or something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's why I was going over all this stuff in my head. I'm like, what is it? Like, what is the brother trying to do? Like, what is the point of this?
That's the point, apparently. I did not get that from the movie.
Yeah, no, again, that was another thing I was talking about. I didn't get why they were like he was acting like
No.
that.
Yeah, that's kind of I'm just going, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like I said, the cat is one thing. I guess to your point, kind of my low point was that Greta was just so ready just to take up, Sam. I'm like, that feels like a huge leap of commitment there. I guess she was doing it for the right reasons, but I don't know. That's kind of what I was
Well,
thinking.
I think what it was is that she was supposed to be the person that was ready to fight this entity,
To
right?
die for to stop the
She knew
entity.
it
Yeah.
existed. She said that she was part of a group of people that were supposed to fight these things if they
Hmm.
ever found them, because they could be anywhere, so you have to be ready at all times. And when she had the opportunity to fight it, she panicked and ran.
Right.
And so she knew that she wasn't strong enough to fight this thing, but she also knew it's like, the evilest thing she's ever known or whatever.
Yeah.
So that now that Denzel Washington is going to go fight it, she was like, I will do whatever in my power to help you
As a
if you go
penance.
fight it. Like, if you
Yeah.
end up dying, I will take care of him because this is what needs to be done. This is more important.
Right. And let's face it, James's mustache. That's that's my last low point. How about you?
um, yeah, I mean, again, like the brother, I didn't know what the hell was going on there. And like, again, it was just so confusing every time he was on screen. I was just trying to figure out what the fuck, like, what is this? But yeah, I guess that kind of explains it. Whatever. Now, the one thing that really bothered me was he gives them the clue, like we talked about, the whole what's between Lyons and Spukowski, right?
Hmm.
Now, the only, like, I guess, thing that you can gather from that is once he finds out who it is, he's going to look into it. He's going to find out who it is. He's going to find out what happened to him. He goes to the place where he killed himself. He's going to find evidence of the angel. Like, he gave himself away,
Yes.
right?
He's that arrogant,
Right.
keeping that weak outside of a
He did
body.
it on purpose. There's no way that he did not do that on purpose. Otherwise, why would he leave that clue? Twice. He
Right.
left it twice. He told it to him once and he wrote it on a wall.
Yes.
So it's not just a slip of something or him being arrogant. No, he wanted him to know. And then like later on at the end of the police transfer scene when he's talking to the little guy on the street,
Yeah.
he says that he found the cabin and he knows what he is and he knows his name. And he's like, "Oh, you weren't supposed to find that out." It's like, "Wait, what?" You fucking sent him there.
Right.
You now you're going to be upset that he knows information about you. You fucking gave him that clue that got him there. If you never said that, he would never know.
Yeah.
So like, how
True.
are you going to be upset that he now knows things about you when you were the one that put him on the fucking trail? It was bizarre to me. Like, how are you going to be upset about
Right.
that?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, holy shit, how much fucking coffee did they drink in this movie?
Yeah.
Every fucking scene is coffee, 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 coffee. You want some coffee? Oh, look, here's a thermos of coffee. Oh, look, I'm brewing a pot of coffee. Oh, look, I have a little paper cup in the middle of the fucking street somehow that's with coffee in it. Every scene is coffee.
Yeah. It's three. I just had my morning coffee. You know what? It's been an hour since I had coffee. You need coffee? 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 Yes. They are, they drink coffee like it's water. You're absolutely correct on that.
But yeah, I'm not that big of a coffee drinker. Maybe coffee drinkers do drink that much coffee. I don't know. I don't.
I drink enough in the morning, but I don't go, I'm having coffee at, 3 o'clock. I'd be too wired to ever sleep.
Yeah, I have a cup of coffee in the morning.
Right.
That's it.
Any other low points?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay. So our olives this week, we're just going with meat suits because that's how these evil entities treat. I'd say that the humans in these movies as just nothing but disposable meat suits. Um, so I will go first for this one. Am I going to watch this movie again? I don't know. I may watch it again, just distraction free, just to give it the best attention I possibly can give it. I will give this 7 meat suits out of 10. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I do rewatch this movie, so I have to give it at least a 7. But yeah, 7.5. 7.5 meat suits out of 10.
Like I said, I really think this movie just kind of got lost in the shuffle of the end of the 90s demonic possession horror movies slash thrillers. All right. So next up, we have It Follows. Why don't you take that away, Salem?
Sure. Now this, when did it come out? 2014.
14. Yes.
So this pretty much like this movie brought me back into watching horror movies again. Like before this, it was very rare that I would. I was
Right.
very tired of them. But I watched this movie like somebody like it looked interesting. I watched it and I was very surprised. Anyway, so it follows basically. It opens up with a young girl, like probably I don't know, teenager, college age maybe. Um, like runs out of her house all super scared. Kind of does this weird like wide semicircle of her house, like looking at something. Other people are looking around, and obviously no one else can see what it is. Um, but she does a big wide circle, gets in her car, and takes off.
Yep.
Drives to the beach, leaves her car with her headlights on her, puts her back to the sea, and then is like, just sitting there like terrified and staring straight. And then it just kind of cuts to like her being like broken in half.
Yeah.
So like yeah, obviously she was killed by something. We don't know what it is. So then it cuts to Jay, who is our main protagonist. She is I don't know, typical kind of millennial. That's what I would say, just like very I don't know, just like unenthused about everything
Except swimming.
except swimming. But she seems unenthused even while she's swimming, but you know she enjoys it because she does it a lot.
Yes.
Anyway, so she's like the main character. Her the other characters here are her little sister, and then her and her sister's friends who are Paul and Yara. And they just kind of all hang out at her house, just seems like all the time.
Watching old ass movies.
Yeah, watching just old ass movies. I'm pretty sure they're just watching things that are free and
Yes.
open source to put on television. But yes, old, really old, like bad sci-fi movies.
On really old TVs.
Right, right. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
So anyway, like the sorry. Anyway, so basically they all just kind of hang out, they all kind of do nothing. But the Jay has a date. And
Yes.
she goes out on this date with this guy. You know, obviously the sister has met the guy, like, you know, he's seems like a normal guy. They go to a theater to watch a movie. And they're sitting there and then like the guy is like, "Oh, check out that girl in the yellow dress." She's like, "What girl?" He's like, "Oh, we gotta go."
Right.
So they get up and they leave, and they like drive, and then just they go have dinner. But he like leaves the movie that they were going to go see as the date, just kind of like abruptly.
Yes.
So yeah, she's kind of like telling her sister the next day, like, yeah, it's kind of weird, like I don't know what's going on, but I'm going out with them again tonight. So she goes out with them again. Whatever, they end up boning in a car. And then he chloroforms her after the deed is done. No assault has happened. Like it was all consensual.
Yes.
But afterwards, while they're like, in their post-coital bliss, I guess, he chloroforms her and knocks her out. She wakes up tied to a wheelchair. And they're in like this old abandoned building, like up on like the second floor. And
Seeming
he's
like a
like,
parking garage.
well, no, I mean, it wasn't ramps. I think it was just an old building that was the walls had fallen out of. Whatever. It's an old
Yeah.
ass
Right.
concrete building that's obviously been crumbling to nothing. But the walls are opened out, so he's got wide open spaces. So he's like keeps moving to different sides of this building and looking out with the flashlight, obviously looking for something. And she's like, screaming for help, and he's kind of ignoring her. And then basically explains to her, like, okay, I have to show you this thing. I know you're not going to believe me, but I have to show it to you, and you have to listen to what I'm saying. And she's like, okay. And he's like, okay, here it is. And he's like, go look. And he wheels her over to this thing, and he points down. He's like, you see that? And it's like a naked woman
Yep.
just like walking towards them. And she's like, yeah, I see it. Like, what is this? And he's like, now you have to pay attention. Like, I passed it to you when we just boned in the car. This thing is going to try to kill you. It's going to walk after you. Like, it's not fast. Like, you can get away from it because it only just walks. It's walking speed. But it will kill you if it gets to you. It passes through like an STD somehow.
Yep.
But anyway, you have to not let it touch you, because if it kills you, it's going to come back to me. It keeps trying to go down that line. So you have to do everything that you can to get rid of it. He's like, you're a girl. You can go sleep with anybody you want just to pass it along. Right. He's like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry I did this to you, but like I have to survive. So he basically, puts her back in the car, drives her home, just kind of dumps her out on the street and leaves.
Yep.
So, her sister and their friends were, playing what old maid out in front of the house. So they see her get dropped off like in her underwear. So they, go over, and the cops and everything come, but she says like, no, it was consensual, but like, he did this weird assault thing to me afterwards.
Right.
They go to this scene, they find the wheelchair, they find her purse there, like, so they know it was true, they know it happened. But there's nothing they can really do because they can't find him. He
Right. And the
used a
house.
fake name. The
Right.
house that he was in was rented under a fake name. He's not there.
Right.
There's nothing they can do. They can't find him. Because she knew where he lived, but she had never been inside.
Yes.
So they're all like, yeah, kind of whatever. Like she goes to the hospital and gets like rape kit and all that kind of, traumatizing, right?
Yeah.
She's obviously like traumatized by this whole. So she goes back to school, which I don't know why she would go back to school right away, but she goes back to school. She's sitting in class and she's staring out the window, and she sees like an old lady in like a hospital gown, like just like walking towards her slowly.
Right.
So as she gets closer and closer and closer, it's pretty obvious that it's walking directly towards her. Like she gets up, leaves the room, and then walks out in the hallway. And she walks between like two girls that are talking, and then gets to the end of the hallway right before the door. The old lady like walks in between them, and she gets closer and closer, and she's like, "Hello." And one of the girls that is talking is like, "Hello, like what's your problem?" Like obviously they cannot see this old lady. So she just, gets in a car, goes home, like tells everybody about it. They're all kind of like, you've been through a lot. you know, you need to kind of just like relax. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you need to calm
Right.
down. So anyway, they're all, but she's still like, scared and messed up. So they're like, okay. how about, we'll all spend the night here. And Paul, the little kind of geeky dude is like, I'll stay up all night and make sure nothing
They're like, no.
happens. What? Hey, he can scream and make noise and wake everybody up. I guess that's better than nothing. So, he's staying up watching bad movies. She obviously can't sleep. So she goes downstairs and she's just kind of hanging out with Paul, because they can't sleep together when a window smashes in the kitchen. Paul
Yes.
goes in there and he's like, "Oh, there's nothing there." He's like, he sees the window was broken, but there's nothing in the room. So he goes. He's like, "I'm gonna go wake up your sister. Like, we gotta figure out what's going on." So he goes up, bravely goes upstairs and leaves her by herself after a window was just broken. So Jay goes into the kitchen to check it out, and she sees like I want to say an obvious like rape victim. I
Yeah.
mean, she's like a very like beat up, like clothes half torn
She
off.
is last house on the left slash
Right.
I
Like,
spit in your grave.
right. Yeah. It looks like she had a horrible, horrible night. And then she starts like peeing all over on herself and all over the floor and everything. Like it's messed up. It's a weird looking scene. So
Yes.
Jay screams and runs up into her room, and they're all like, "What the fuck?" They're like, "Let me in, let me in." So she opens the door. Her sister and Paul come in, and she's like, "Oh, I saw it. It's in the house." And they're like, there's nothing there. Like, we
Yeah.
look, there's nothing, there. We don't know what you're talking about." So the door starts knocking. They're all freaking out. It's just Yara. But when they open the door, now it's like his big giant, like 8 foot tall dude.
Essentially tiny from Rob Zombie's
Right?
movie.
Yeah, he's a giant dude that like Yara comes walking in. The dude like ducks under the door frame to
Yeah.
get into her. So she like, panics and freaks out and then like, she thinks she jumps out the window.
Oh, she does.
Yeah, she jumps out the window, she's running, she jumps on a bike and then goes to the park down the street. So they like eventually they find her. So like, the friends all find her like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? And she's like, you guys couldn't see it, but there was a thing that was chasing me. Like whatever the guy did to me, like it's true. Like
Right.
something is trying to get me. And then so like the guy that lives across the street that had seen all this kind of stuff, who's kind of like your, I don't know, rebel kind of dude,
Sure.
but he's like a millennial rebel. So he's really
Right.
just doesn't give a shit about anything. So anyway, so he shows up to the park and he's like, "What's going on?" And he kind of gets a mini rundown and he's like, "Okay." And he starts walking away and they're like, "Oh, is you just gonna leave?" He's like, "No, I'm gonna go get my car."
All right.
It's like, so we're gonna go find this dude and we're gonna go figure out what's going on. So they drive to the boyfriend's house. They go in the house. There's like nothing in the house. It's like an old beat to shit house. Now, when I say beat to shit house, now this is in Detroit.
Yeah.
So this is your typical like urban decay, like houses falling down neighborhood, right?
Meth
Abandoned
addict
neighborhood.
house. Yeah.
And it's like a house in that kind of neighborhood. So it's like, yeah, it looks like total shit. But they see like all the windows and doors are covered in like cans and bottles and shit like that, right? So like this is obviously like the guy was like hiding out in this house, but he knew about this thing and he was like defending himself and hiding there.
Right.
Now, Paul, somehow finds his porn mags upstairs covered in used tissues, very quality. And as he's flipping through them, he finds a picture. Now, the picture is of the guy that she dated, and some girl that they don't know, but he's wearing like a Letterman's jacket for a high school that they know of. So they go to the high school, and they, basically show, looking for this guy. The administrator people say, "Oh, here's the guy." They get his real name, and they go to his house, and he's there. He's just living at home with his mom. And he comes out and talks to them basically like, yeah, like I told you, that's what the thing is. Like, I'm sorry I gave it to you, but like, I didn't force you or anything. Obviously that's, hindsight, right?
Right.
But he's like, yeah, he's like, just don't die because if you die, it comes after me. He's like, you got to pass it on to somebody else and just continue that chain far enough to where it doesn't come back to
Right.
you. And he's like, now, you know, I really don't want you around me. So please leave. And he runs away. So they're like, okay, we have to go deal with this. What are we going to do? So they basically decide they're gonna go to the guy Greg's like I don't know where like cabin on the lake or something.
Sure.
So they go to this cabin in the lake and they're basically like, "Oh, there's a gun here. We'll teach you how to shoot a gun. And then we'll have this gun in case anything happens." So they're all like hanging out at the beach, just like doing random hangout stuff. Greg goes off to take a leak, and then the thing walks up, grabs her hair, and you just see the hair floating in midair. Obviously, Jay can see it, but no one else can. So they just see her hair floating up, and then they see her like being thrown around like a rag doll, kind of. So Paul comes up and swings like a lawn chair at it, and it actually like crumples up the lawn chair. So like something is there. It's just invisible. So they basically they get Jay gets free. They go run in this garage. They close the door. They lock it. Bang 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 bang. Like the bottom of um the the door gets kicked out. They manage to get the gun and they start shooting. And now Greg sees nothing there, right? He just sees them shooting at him. So
Well,
he's
yeah.
like, what the fuck? So Genius runs back up and sticks his head through the hole. Hey, what are you guys doing? Like, dude, they were just shooting. Why would you stick your whatever? So he's like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we saw the thing. We shot it. Like, we think it's gone, whatever. But we need to get out of here. So they leave, they go back home and they're like, what are we gonna do? Like this is, something bad is happening. Like her arm was broken by the thing. So they go to the hospital, she gets a cast on. She decides to bone Greg because Greg is not scared of this thing. At this point, I think it's because he doesn't believe. Because the other ones, like Paul, Yara, and her sister, at this point have now physically seen it. I mean, it's invisible, yes, but they've seen her hair, her arm get broken, the lawn chair smash on it. But Greg was off taking a leak. So he doesn't really believe. He thinks they're all like hysterical. So anyway, they bone so he can pass it. She can pass it to him. Then there's like a weird scene of Greg like hanging out with a bunch of like high school girls at the mall. I think they're insinuating that he's gonna pass it on, right, or something. So anyway, so Jay is now like terrified, locked in her room, and just won't come out at all. And she just keeps watching Greg's house to see if she can see this thing reappear. And it does. And and she can see it now because it's not directly coming after her anymore, but if it has come after you at any point, you can now see it, which is why the other guy could see it when it was going after her. So she sees it going into Greg's house. Anyway, it manages to get in there and it kills Greg, and she witnesses like the kill this time. It's like a weird, like, I don't know, hump kill. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like it like steals your life energy through like a sexual assault. Is what it
And
looks
what
like
makes it
happens.
worse is it was his mom.
Yes, it was his mom, which is yeah, it probably is worse. But so at this point, they're like, okay, what the hell do we do? So they basically come up with this plan, like, because now it's coming after her again. So they all jump in the car and leave, and she sees the thing like staring at her and like like marking her as next. So they basically go to this big pool, which is where they used to hang out as kids, and they bring all these like electrical devices. It looks like they just went to a thrift store and bought like everything that plugged in.
I think that's exactly what they
That's what it
did.
looks like happened. So they go to this pool and they set up they plug in all these devices with like extension cords all around the pool. And they basically say, Jay, get in the middle of the pool. And then we're all gonna be here when it comes in, you like tell us where it is, and then we're gonna try to trick it to go into the water, and then we're gonna throw in these things that electrocute, which was the plan, right? So when it gets there, she's like, "Oh, there it is," and she's like, holding her finger at it so that they can kind of see it. Again, the thing's not dumb. It immediately knows what's going on, so it starts picking up the devices and throwing them in the pool with Jay there, which is a good thing that the whole throwing an electrical appliance in a pool will kill you is not true because otherwise she would be very dead. So anyway, so now, but she's like trapped in there while it's throwing like TVs and radios and typewriters and all kinds of shit at her. She gets bonked a couple of times and she has a hard time like staying up because the thing keeps throwing shit at her.
Because it has scary accuracy.
Well, scary accuracy and scary strength. I mean, we don't know what
Yeah.
this thing even is at all. We get nothing about this thing.
Right.
So anyway, she gets up and she's kind of like pointing, at where it is. Paul breaks out the gun that he had taken with. He tries to shoot at it. He ends up shooting Yara in the leg. But they have the genius idea of they use like a sheet and they're like swinging it around, like trying to find him. And they've ended up putting it over his head, like, like a Scooby Doo villain. And
Right.
then Paul runs up and shoots it in the head at point blank range.
Yes.
And then it falls into the pool. Like Jay gets out and they're like, okay, like, is it dead? Like, it's obviously not coming after you. Like, what's going on? And she looks in the pool and just sees just like blood everywhere. Like the entire pool is now red with blood.
It's like the shining elevator got off at the pool level.
Right, right, right. So then she goes back home. They have a awkward scene where she then bones Paul. I guess to try to pass it on to him. And then they show them kind of like walking down the street holding hands. But ominously there's a person walking slowly behind.
Oh, they also have the scene before that where Paul goes past some ladies of the night.
Well, yeah, he does the same thing that Greg did with the high school girls, to where Paul as the ladies of the night. Like he seriously looks like he's like 12 years old driving that car. Like he looks like a tiny child driving a giant car.
Yes.
But yeah, so he drives past ladies of the night, whatever, and then they walk down holding hands, and then you see again a person walking slowly behind them. Could it be it? Sure. Could it not be it? Sure. We don't know.
In a very distant background.
Right. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we don't know. End of
Right.
movie.
Yes. Why don't you go into your first thoughts? I know we briefly discussed that this is the movie that got you back into horror.
Yeah, man, this movie is just really, really well done. It is the style of it is it's just interesting because it kind of puts it in this weird like timeless
Uh-huh.
kind of era. Like it's weird because all the TVs are like old CRT TVs with like fucking antennas. All the shit they're watching is super old. All the furniture is like old ass like 70s, 80s era furniture and shit.
Yeah.
But they have cell phones. Like Yara has like an e-reader thing.
That's a clam.
Yeah, that's like a clam, which doesn't exist, but like that's what she has. So like it's again, it's like it's weird, timeless. Like some things are out of time, some things are not. It's just an interesting setting that they're in. And it's interesting that it's also in like decaying Detroit,
Right.
which is odd enough, especially at this point in time. But it just the atmosphere of it is done well. Just like the attitude that they have when it's done, it's kind of like a realistic portrayal of like what some bunch of kids would do.
Yeah.
And again, there's the goofy things of like the tropes of like, oh, you're gonna electrocute him in the pool, and it just like plain out does not work. Because again, kids wouldn't know that. Everybody
Right.
talks about putting a toaster in the bathtub, right? Nobody knows that like it won't work. Like that's not a thing that you can do.
Right.
But yeah, again, overall, I really liked the movie. I really liked the presentation. I thought it was a nice, fresh breath of air, in a genre that at that point for me was so very stale.
Right. I know I've watched this many times it has come out. And I don't think I've noticed anything new necessarily on any of the rewatches. But yeah, I mean it is it is timeless. That's kind of in my highlights there. So I'll get a little bit here. But yeah, I mean this is like is it elevated horror that everyone seems to think it is? I'm not necessarily certain about that. Is it as silly as a ghost STD can sound? Maybe. Um,
Yeah, I mean the concept of it is weird, but again, they don't try to like explain it to you.
No. And I know that angers a lot of people because we essentially the lore is you bone someone that has it, you have it. That's the lore.
That's all you need. I
Right.
mean, that's the point. It's about the characters. It's not about the thing. The
Right.
thing is just a force that's
Right.
working against them, and they have to figure out how to deal with it.
Right. And we go discuss this a lot. Is there such a thing as too much lore? And in this case, yes. I think if they have, I'm concerned about they follow is that it may ruin the unknown about it.
It may, but you know what? This first one is perfect as it
Yeah.
is. So like, even if they make sequels that suck, that's okay. You know what I mean? That's all right. The first one is still a great movie. I mean, could they make a sequel so bad that I would less like the first one less? Possibly, but like unlike.
Right. But no, it's still a solid watch the entire way through, no matter how many times you watch it.
Yeah, I did. I watched it a lot, and I've never been like upset that I watched it. It's always a solid watch.
Yeah. Um, you want me to go into my highlights?
Yes.
All right. The timelessness. You like, is it 1970? Is it 2014? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, is it an alternate Earth where 70s and 80s style and CRT TVs exist in the modern day? Who knows?
Right. Or is it
Maybe.
just people that have to, get their electronics from a used reseller?
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
entirely possible too.
if
But
you
then they
notice,
have that.
when they're watching TV, they have the classic old TV on top of an older broken TV as the
Yep.
TV stand. Like, I definitely had that when I was younger.
Oh, everyone that moved into a house that had the giant TV that was too much for people to take out when they left. Yeah, that's what you did.
Yeah, I had a giant wooden console TV. And then
Yep.
when I got a better TV, I just put it on top of that TV. It's like, I'm moving this thing.
Yeah. And like I said, the unknown of whatever this thing is, the rules are unknown. Can you, you know, uh, it doesn't, if you're in a gangbang, doesn't matter which one does the deed. Like, or can you pass on to 15 people at a time? You
Well,
don't know.
well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, do people have to finish? Is it just insertion? I mean, who knows? Does
Does it work?
oral count?
Does it work? Does lesbians count? I mean,
Right, yeah, who knows? We don't know. I mean, we don't know what about it is doing it. Is it just like the act of like who knows?
right. Maybe if they're in a gangbang of 15 people, they get 15 small ones and you create more of them. Who knows?
Yeah, but that's the thing is we don't get a whole lot about it, but you don't need it. You don't need a lot
Right.
about it. I mean, if you explained more about it, it would probably just sound stupid.
Yes. And it's and I like it because it's that looming fear of it's potentially always there. But it's not like, is it a maybe unkillable thing? Yes, but can you still kind of live? Yes. You're mildly you're inconvenienced, don't get me wrong. There's been entire theories out there of how to beat this thing, essentially because it walks so stupidly slow.
Yeah, I'll get into that.
Yeah.
I have math.
Yeah. Um that you may be able to beat it, and it's just something that you just kind of pass on. Now, do I think it's a dick move to not tell the person? Yes. You should tell them because then they're more likely then to do it, and then he gets to
Well, yeah, if
the
you
further
don't
ways
tell
from
them,
you.
right?
Yeah.
If you don't tell
They're
them,
gonna
you'd be like,
die.
okay, dude, why are you walking straight at me? What's your deal? Like,
Right.
you're not gonna know this guy's gonna murder you.
Right. So it's gonna come to you faster.
Right.
It's a very small reprieve. Very small reprieve. Um yeah, and that I think the effects, the gore they had were pretty spot on in the cast too. Like, everyone's felt like you were just the blah millennials of that time period. They're like, we're not gonna do anything other than watch really shitty Svengulia movies. What about you? What are your highlights?
Um. Yeah. I mean, like, I also like the timelessness of it, to where like you have no idea what time frame it's supposed to be in.
Right.
Because it's all over the place. Just the technology involved and stuff like that. I really like the cinematography of it. Just the atmosphere, the way things are shot, like the kind
Hmm.
of like establishing shots, and like I mean, you get weird shots that go kind of like upside down,
Yeah.
or crooked, just to kind of show you like, hey, like something's weird, something's wrong, like just to put you in the right state of mind. I think they did a very good job doing that. I will also say that this score, the actual like background score of this movie is really interesting. It's just kind of like it sounds like 80s synth sounds.
But it's unnerving.
Yeah, but it does that. It makes it does the perfect thing where it makes you on edge when you're supposed to be. Like
Right.
stuff like that. Now, like the chase music is different. Like that's great. It's like something is happening, something is chasing you. This is bad music. You don't want to listen to this. But like the score itself is also very good. They're both done very well.
Right.
I like seeing Detroit. I like seeing like broken, rundown Detroit. I think the only other movie that does it or has done it recently that I've seen is like Don't Breathe.
And Saw. And we
Well,
determined Saw takes place in
well,
Detroit.
yeah, but like the other ones show you the neighborhoods and what they look like, which is just very interesting to me. I
Well,
mean, I wouldn't
Barbarian
want to
did that.
actually go there,
Barbarian
but
did that too.
what's that?
Barbarian was Detroit.
Yeah, it was. I love Barbarian.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I thought those were fun and good. I think that's it for
Yeah. Why don't you,
highs.
why don't you roll into your lows?
Okay, I'll start with a simple one first. That is shooting into water does
Does
not
nothing.
work like you think it works.
It goes
Okay.
about what they said, like 6 to 8 inches at
Well,
best.
6 to 8 inches at best, but two, the angle that he was shooting at, like when a bullet hits water, it doesn't go straight. It like because the water is reacting against it, so it'll change trajectory when it hits the water.
Yes.
Like the angle that he was shooting at was so close to hitting Jay that it's like near impossible that he would have not hit her. But even the bullet did hit the thing underwater, it would not have like punctured anything. It would not have done whatever. Shooting underwater is not what you think it is.
Go watch Mythbusters.
Yeah. So the second thing I have a big problem with this movie is the timeline of walking.
Hmm.
Now I understand for the point of the movie, they just kind of like gloss over some of the timing, because it shows up when it's convenient for the story for it to show up, right?
Yes.
But like, okay, if you like, I did the math here because like the average person, if you're like, walking a decent clip, right, you do about 15 minutes a mile.
Yes.
So if you were to drive 100 miles away, which is not that far,
No.
right? Take you a couple hours. It would take it 12 hours to walk to you.
Yes.
So if they drove to this cabin at the lake that was probably at least 100 miles away, there's no way that it would have gotten there the same day.
No.
It would have gotten there again 12 hours later. But also, I was doing math, and if you drove from one side of the United States to the other side of the United States, that's like 3,000 miles.
Yep.
It would take over 30 days to walk that.
Right.
So this thing doesn't get tired. It doesn't stop. It doesn't need to eat or anything. So it's just straight walking that long. It would take over 30 days. So if you just had a house in Los Angeles and a house in New York, and you made sure to move every 30 days,
Yep.
it would never get you.
Correct. And that's assuming you couldn't just, go over a continent and to across the ocean. We don't know if we can go in the ocean. That would take even
Well,
longer.
who knows? I mean, but again, I'm sure if it's walking and it's like immortal, I'm sure it can just walk underwater.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, if it can get shot in the head, I don't think it can survive that much water pressure,
No.
right? But I guess it wouldn't be that hard for it to stand on a boat invisibly. You know what I mean? Or get on a plane invisible. But we don't know if it's that smart because it doesn't drive.
Right.
So like it just does walking speed stuff. But yeah, I don't know how it would like get across an ocean or even if it could.
Right.
I don't know. We don't get enough information. But again, the timelines. Like when she gets hit originally, right? Like, she goes on the date, she bones the dude, she goes home, then she goes to the hospital, then she comes back home, and then she goes to school. And somehow it never shows up that whole time.
Correct.
which is pretty impossible. It doesn't show up until she's at school like 2 days later.
Yes.
So I know they weren't that far away. So in order for that to have happened, she would have had to have been 400 miles away from home. You know what I mean? They would have had to drive 400 miles away to that abandoned building to bone, which I don't think he would be able to get her back the same night, you know?
No.
And it's still a decent time when they were outside playing cards. I don't think you could drive 400 miles in that span. But again, there's some timelines that don't make sense in this, but that's fairly minor. I just, I'd always think about things like that with
Right.
movies like this because like that's where my mind like I need to
Yeah.
figure out how to not get attacked by this thing.
Right. Is that all your low points?
Yes, sir.
All right. I mean, yeah, you are absolutely correct. The mileage, it is a livable entity that you could theoretically be able to do just fine. But,
Well, I
like if
mean,
you
but
if
that
you
yeah,
know
that's
basic math, you could easily go, "Hey, I'm just gonna drive like a state or two away once a week."
yeah, or but also the other millennial horror thing is that millennials can't buy houses.
Right.
So if they can't buy a house, that means they're not gonna be able to afford a place, one side or the other. So you're gonna have to like hitchhike
Yeah.
across the country and be
Right.
like a homeless person.
Um. And the insinuation of the guy at the high school girls, her going out to the boat of two or three guys maybe, and the ladies of the night, like it all those times it came back pretty damn fast. So essentially, it followed you there. You waited till it was there, boned, and then killed immediately, and then started following you again. You know, uh, yeah. I mean, you're right. Is this going to be a question that's always in your head? Of how do you? What are the rules? Like I said, I'm concerned that they follow will just explain too much, and it'll kind of dissolve the mystery of it all. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, Paul looks like he's 12, without a doubt. Mom was barely there.
And then that's not all that uncommon. They were of age where they could take care of themselves.
Yeah, and I would say the most boring part of the movie is when she's sitting in the college classroom. I'm like, I'm bored for her.
Well, yeah, but you're supposed to be because you're
I
supposed to
know,
like let your guard down and be bored at that time, and then see the building
right?
suspense.
And then the real question is it always incestuary rape when they get killed?
I don't know. We only got to see one actual attack, so.
Yeah,
Well, I guess no, we did see one attack. We got to see when it attacked her the first time on the beach. Like that was the first time it like touched her, right?
right. And the thing is, I think the last thing she saw it was her dad.
Yeah, well possibly. A guy that looked like her dad.
Right.
But
And I'm like,
we never saw the actor. We just saw a picture of him.
right. I'm like, oh, maybe it is just all ancestry
I mean,
rape.
it might be,
So,
but when she was on the beach, what form did it take? Well, when it
yeah,
attacked her and was pulling her hair the first time, it was Yara.
yeah. So it's always people. It seems to be always people. So
Well, not necessarily, because like that little kid that had the scabs, the dude that's like 8 feet
yeah,
tall. I mean, the weird naked old man on the roof, the weird
uh,
naked old lady. I mean, that's like the old lady that was like in the
yeah.
hospital gown. I mean, there's a lot of things that are just strangers, but yeah, there are sometimes it's ones that you know.
And and speaking of naked on the roof, that like I don't get why it'd be on the roof first and foremost.
Well, again, because it's not dumb, and it already tried to go in the house one time,
Right.
so it's probably trying to go in through a different way, and they just left at the right time.
Maybe. That's all I got though. Why don't you go first for our number of meat suits out of 10?
Number of meat suits out of 10. Again, like I really like this movie. This movie brought me like back into the horror world, and again, I've
Mhm.
watched it multiple times since then, and I like it. My delight of it has not gone down. So I like it a lot. So I'm gonna give it a 9.5. 9.5 meat suits out of 10.
I was thinking the same score. It's a solid movie. Like I said, it was honestly, it was hard to get low points. We were quite nitpicky about it.
No, yeah. I mean, again, it's I understand why it was done. It was done for the sake of storytelling. I'm not
Yes.
I'm not saying that oh you should have followed the math exactly. No, because that would have been
Right.
again, it's done for the sake of storytelling, and that's fine as long as you're
Yeah.
telling a story. It just that's the kind of things that I think about when a movie is happening. Like, couldn't they just do this? Couldn't they
Yes.
just do that? I mean, like
Yeah.
again, they like okay, she was the only one that could see it. Like, why don't they all just bone each other?
Right.
And then it doesn't matter who it's following; they can all at least see it.
Yep.
I mean, but who knows? Like,
Right.
what if you bone somebody and then you bone them again later? Does it go
Yeah.
back to the other person, or is it
So many
only a one way thing?
so many sex rules we have to know.
Well, I'm just saying there's
I
there's
know.
so many things you don't know. But again, you would have to like have a bunch of weird sex games to figure that out, which I'm sure they don't want to be doing that.
No. All right. That brings us into the last movie for this episode, Smile. Came out in 2022. Now we did discuss this a bit on our yearly review of 2022, so we're not going to go too high in this. I'm pretty sure we explained the synopsis at that point in time.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Um,
sure we did.
yeah. So the long and short of it is essentially, we meet, a woman seeing a patient. He's, saying, I'm going to die, you're going to die, we're all going to die, I'm going to die, you're going to die, we're all going to die type things. And, we're introduced to, it opens up with, a mother and a child. But like I said, that we'll just get that plot point is her mom committed suicide and she was there to witness it. She blames the older sister for not being there. That storyline complete. um, essentially, as she's worked like an 18-hour shift and she's trying to leave for the night. A person comes in there, was coming in an ambulance, and she's like, "Hey, I'm not crazy. I'm a PhD student. I kind of know what's gone here, but like there's something there. Sometimes it's so but it's just smiles." And she's like, "I know I'm not crazy, but you're not really listening to me." And all of a sudden, she sees something behind the psychiatrist or therapist that no one else can see, that she couldn't see, and she freaks out. So she's the I don't remember her name. I'm bad with names sometimes.
The doctor
Yeah,
Rose.
Rose, you're right. Rose, and while she's trying to call for someone to come help, you see her big smash of flower vase is destroyed, and then the woman that was there just proceeds to give herself a second smile, ear to ear, essentially, and has that creepy smile. So yeah, Laura's like, okay, she's rightfully unnerved. She goes home and we're introduced to her fiance, and he just kind of scares the crap out of her. Uh, she's like, okay, this is weird. And she starts kind of seeing stuff, you know, weirdly about, she thinks she sees her patient that she brought in there is like, you're going to die, has a weird smile. And she calls for like, orderlies to come sedate him. And like four people come just tackle the poor dude. He wasn't doing anything. And they sedate him. And the doctor, played by Kyle Penn's, like, he's never done this before. It's like, I don't know what happened. It's like, yeah, you need to take off of work for like a week. It'll be paid. It's like, no. It's like, no, you need to do it. So kind of anyway, she goes, has dinner with her sister, and her absolutely whipped husband, talking about their nephew's birthday party, that she's gonna come there and all this stuff. Eventually she's like, hey, he likes toy trains, so she didn't get a toy train. She kind of is trying to put her life back together, Rose is, after this incident. And she goes talk to her own therapist and telling her what's going on. She's like, do you think it's because of your mother that you saw her die? And she's like, no, I don't think it's any of this stuff. Just give me the meds. I know what meds I need just to help me sleep. She's like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And, kudos for that therapist for not just give her meds. Uh,
Well, I think yeah, that's the thing about therapists is that she is a therapist, so she's assuming she knows what's wrong with her.
Right.
So
You
she's
can't
trying to
yeah.
self-diagnose. And she like the other therapist straight up tells her like, let's not self-diagnose. Let's work
Right.
through this.
Right.
So
Yeah. It,
that's why she
it
says no right away, because she's like, no, we gotta like figure out what's going on before I just give you drugs just because you want
right. You generally can't just go get antipsychotic meds for no reason, which is good. So anyway, she's having more weird stuff like, she's at her house and the door opens, she calls and resets the alarm. The alarm company calls like, "Oh, what's your name and passcode?" She gives it to her. And it's like, "Are you sure you didn't? Are you sure you closed the door?" And she like snaps out of it and realizes it's person on the line again. So she's seeing stuff. She's listened to the audio tape of her talking to the girl that killed herself, Laura, and she hears like someone saying Rose, kind of like an EVP almost, I would say, because everyone knows that you just enhance the sound clip and they spread it out and you just gets louder every single time.
well, when
Not
it's a demon fucking with you, yeah, it does.
Yeah. Eventually, Rose, goes to her nephew's birthday party and he's like excited for the toy train. And no, it was the cat mustache, dead. And she starts freaking out. She sees Laura there. She falls through the table and her arms get cut to shit. And, she sees, one of the cops that was there for Laura, she's talking to was her old boyfriend. And he starts looking into these trends of things like, oh, well, Laura saw someone kill himself. So apparently they kind of just go down that path. They find like, okay, I found 20 cases, 19 people died. She's, what do you mean? Who didn't die? Like I said, she found this by going to someone's house that she was trying to, fake being reported. And he was trying to smile. Let's call it demon at this point in time. Um, so anyway, she talks to the cop. He's like, okay, we need to go talk to this guy that lived. And wow, he was in all the Marvel Netflix shows.
Turk, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, I killed someone and it skipped me. It's like, oh, I have. It's like, you brought that shit here. Like, get out, man. There's only one way to do it. It's just to kind of kill someone.
Yeah, well, basically at this point you learn that it feeds off of trauma.
Right,
So you have to kill someone, and someone has to witness it, and they have to experience a level of trauma.
right,
And when they do, then it's able to move to that new person.
right.
So it
Um,
basically sticks with you until you're so traumatized that it can just take you over. And then
yes,
it kills itself, traumatizes a new person, and then just keeps that cycle going.
right. The most people last 4 8. The longest people lasted was
Right.
7 days overall. And she's like, oh, this is my fourth night. Um, and then essentially she gets back and I'm trying to think of what happens. She tries to think that she's gonna kill her fiance.
Well, yeah. Basically, at this point, she tries to like assume like, okay, maybe I'll take his advice.
Yeah,
I'll go back to the hospital and I'll kill the guy that was like so messed up that he's like barely functional.
yeah,
She's like, I'll kill him because nobody will miss him, and I'll let the Cal Penn watch and pass
yes,
it to him. But that was all a fantasy. She never actually got out of her car. But
right,
Cal Penn walked up to her car and was like, "Hey, like, what's going on? What are you doing?" Because he sees the knife in her car, so he's like, "Oh, please come back. You gotta like, don't traumatize yourself." Blah blah blah. So at this point, she realizes that everybody's after her. Like they put out an APB on her,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So
For mental well being. Yeah. So
right,
she drives to the cabin or the house that she grew up in that her mom had killed herself. She's like, okay, uh, if I'm here by myself, it can't leave. It ends with me. She's kind of doing the Denzel Washington from Fallen. And make sure that it just can't pass on. And she sees her mother there asking for help, and then it turns into a mix between the Blair Witch and Barbarian is the best way I
I
kind
call
of
her Big Mama.
Big Mama. And kind of just goes uh into her. Because she realizes it's all hallucination. The house is kind of fire. Her old boyfriend goes up there, and well, after seeing the demon kind of force its way into the house, she smiles and she sets herself ablaze. And then we end with the blaze going into Joel's eyes and the movie, it being passed on to him. Quick, dirty thing. I don't think I missed anything really that important.
No, good enough.
Also, first thoughts. I'm like this. I mean, I know people were talking about this movie when it came out. I think we saw it maybe 2 weeks after it came out. We went to go see it. Um,
Uh, Something like that.
yeah, it was in theaters. I know that, and I'm like, holy shit, this movie is fantastic. Anyone that listens to us know that we like bad endings, and this is definitely a bad ending. And I thought the creatures effects were done. I think it was a good combination of different tropes that existed, but it was I think a perfect blend of them together. What about you? What are your first thoughts and on rewatches?
No, I think it's a great movie. It's definitely in the same vein as It Follows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's interesting because I think like It Follows kind of taps into like that, that STD fear,
Yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
this one kind of ties into that trauma fear, like if
yeah.
I witness something horrible, what is it going to do to me in the future? And this is like
Right,
a very literal interpretation of that. But like
right.
this is what trauma does to people. Like it messes you up later on in life. But this is like a directly like, you won't last a week kind of thing. But
Yeah,
it really ties into that. And I think it's kind of the same vein, just get different sides of the same coin, I guess. But it's also interesting because it's looked at like, trauma is obviously a mental health thing,
yeah.
but it's looked at from a mental health professional as a protagonist, which I think is interesting. It puts a different spin on it, right? It's not like they're just going to a person that gives them the lowdown of what's happening. Like they know what's happening.
Right.
Which is, it's just an interesting twist on it.
Yeah. Um, I'll go into the highlights first. Like I said, the mental illness aspect of it, the whole demon thing, is works perfectly well for this movie. The trauma, and once again, what lore do we have? We know it happened 20 times before this, and that's about it. That's
Yeah,
all
we
we really need
know,
to know.
right? We know the pattern.
Yeah.
We know it's like its progression and what it
Mhm.
does and how it needs to move and feed, kind of. But what
Right.
is it? Nobody, no idea.
Right. As you know, I've had this argument with people like, "Oh, it's a bad ending. They can't defeat it." I'm like, "How would she have defeated it? She literally knows nothing about it other than how it
Well,
spreads."
her idea was a good idea.
Yes.
It just the boyfriend fucked it up.
Right.
Well, I should say the cop ex-boyfriend fucked it up.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, like, everyone wanted her to win. I know that watch this movie. I'm like, she knows nothing about it. She's not going to win. Like, there's no way you can think she's going to beat an entity like you're in this movie. Like, no, she's learned nothing enough about it. She just knows she thinks she's going to end its cycle, which obviously failed because it's that powerful of whatever this is to make her see things that aren't there, which we were alluded to throughout the movie. So I don't think it was a far fetched leap for it. You know, I think the acting was spectacular. I think the gore effects were done really well, and even the creature design is creepy as hell. um, like I said, bad endings, love them. When done really well, and this pulled it off tremendously. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'll just add on the endings thing. Like the funny part is like the fantasy that it gives her is that
Hmm.
she defeats the monster in the way that she thinks she can. She goes back to her life and everything is a okay.
Right.
And then she wakes up right? So like, what you think the cheesy ending is going to be is the fantasy.
Yes.
And then when she snaps out of the fantasy, that's when the reality sets in of like, oh shit. Like, no, I like it's never going to end. Like this is going to end bad.
Right.
Yeah, that was fun. But I like the yeah, I will agree with you. The acting was great. I mean, she did a fantastic job. I mean, everybody in this movie, I think, did a fantastic job because it's hard to like portray trauma, right? And I think
Yes.
everybody did a fantastic job with portraying it or dealing with it or
Hmm.
being the different characters. I thought they did a fantastic job. I mean, like her sister and her husband were a little bit of the comic relief, I guess, but like everybody else was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, the cinematography in this one was great. I mean, the way that things are shot, again, you get this upside down and crooked shots. You're kind of putting you in the right state of mind, to like what's going on and what's happening. Um, it was, I thought it was shot really well. Again, I really like the mental health perspective of it. To where it's like professionals trying to like work through the supernatural thing, right?
Right.
Which is again when you're describing what's happening, yeah, that's it's a mental disorder. Like
Mhm.
they think they know exactly what's happening to you, but no, this is a real thing. So it's
Right.
like, what happens if a schizophrenic is telling the truth and they're not actually schizophrenic? Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
I really liked Big Mama. I thought both before and after the skin removal, I thought was fantastic. Just
Yeah.
frightening, scary, terrifying. But yeah, I agree with you. The ending was great.
Why don't you roll into your low points?
Okay. Low points was the Smile title annoying. Like Smile comes in the screen, it goes, "Beep, beep, beep, beep." It's very
It starts
off.
flashing at
Yeah,
you.
it's like
Yes.
very off, and it's like this loud like noise. It's like very off-putting. Like the whole rest of the movie is not of that tone. I don't know why the title, which is supposed to like put you in the right mood, right, is
Yeah.
like so jarringly different than the rest of the film. It's very strange. I do think that Rose is like a skeleton.
Oh yeah.
Not to body shame or anything, but like, wow, she is skinny. Like distractingly skinny sometimes. Uh, Poor mustache. I mean, I felt bad. Poor cat. Like not only do you get killed, but then you get put in a box and put on display for everybody. And okay, now this is the scene where she goes into the hospital and she stabs the guy, the crazy dude.
Yes.
That CGI sucked. If you watch when the knife is entering the body, it is jittering all over the fucking place. It's like going up and down and like somehow going like exactly straight, even though her hand is moving in a curve. It's like bizarrely bad. Like they must have did that at the last minute or forgot they didn't have it or something. It was just like jarringly bad compared to the rest of the movie. Is fucking great. Like all the rest of the effects I thought were fantastic. That one effect was very bad.
Huh. I don't know if I
Distracting.
ever noticed that.
Well, next time you watch it, watch
Yeah.
for the scene where she's stabbing the crazy guy in the hospital and watch that knife.
Huh.
It is bad.
Is that all you
But
got?
that's it. That's all I got.
I mean, yeah, poor mustache. I mean, am I a cat lover? No, but you still don't want that to be the case. Clearly, I mean, we didn't know that she killed the cat, obviously. Um, I mean, you're right about the smile opening credits is like it took a page from Insidious.
Right.
Just like
Yeah, like
the
Insidious,
opening
like,
was Insidious.
like, oh, it's
Right.
gonna be a scary movie. Not.
Right. Um, I mean, and as much as I like the idea of mental health is a tough issue to deal with, you know. Um, but they, like I said, they do it well. It's still hard to watch though, regardless of anything like that. And I mean, yeah, I know her sister and the husband were comic relief, but they didn't fit in with the movie. You know what I
No,
mean?
again, I think that was like they were supposed to be like her normal life.
Yeah.
And like how out of tune she felt with her normal life is how little she got along with them. Is I think what it was supposed to do. Like that and her fiance. Like at the point we meet her in the film, these people seem like alien to her. But that's
Right.
because she's already traumatized so much by that point that like she doesn't feel like she's even in the same life anymore, which is why
Right.
they feel so weird to us. I think that's on purpose.
Well, and I don't, the fiance going, I'm not dealing with this shit. And you just get the fuck out of there. I'm like,
Oh yeah, he was a dick. But again, like she described what happened. She was talking about like when she was dating the cop, like they had a very real relationship,
right.
and she was very standoffish and had her walls up, like she said, from when her mother killed herself, which was like 20 years earlier.
Right.
And when she was dating him, those walls came down and it scared the shit out of her. And so she
Yeah.
left him and she went back to another fake relationship where she felt safer.
Yeah.
So she was just in another fake relationship trying to fake being happy. So I don't think she was really happy. And I don't think he was either. They were just
Right.
doing what they thought they had to do or should do.
Right. And I know this. She goes back for the heavy drinking to the same bottle of wine at least 2 nights.
Okay, heavy drinking. She like goes to pour a glass of wine and it's like drip, drip. And that was it.
It's a shot.
It was like not even one finger of wine in that wine glass. Like, what the hell kind of drink is that?
You don't shoot wine. You
Right. I'm
drink it.
like, what are you doing? Like, oh, I need a drink after a long day. Like, drip, drip, 2 drops of wine. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I'm like that. Like that scene. I'm like, okay, clearly she doesn't know what heavy drinking looks like.
Right. Like, that's heavy drinking? The fuck?
White woman drunk. Yes.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, again, she is like a skeleton, so maybe that is enough to get her drunk. I don't know.
But I'm like, there's another bottle of wine there. Like, okay, opening both, yes. Drinking one, then finishing it, and then going to the other, yes. That implies heavy drinking. The same bottle of wine at least 2 nights. It was already open, so that was at least the third night. Then
I don't know. I'm not a big wine drinker, so like drinking a lot of wine doesn't really sound appealing to me.
no, but you don't shoot wine. I don't
No,
care
I
what
I
it is.
know, I know, I know.
That bothers me to know why. Just to do that. Like it's wine. Wine's not heavy. I'm sorry. But that's all I got. Like I said, I'm just nitpicking at this point in time, just because there's not enough bad things in this for me to kind of demerit this. On that note, though, number of meat suits out of 10, I enjoy this just as much as It Follows. Hands down. I'm giving it a 9.5 as well. I think it's a fantastic movie. I think it doesn't lose anything on any rewatches, and it's perfectly well made. And once again, I hope the sequel doesn't ruin the lore for us. I'm
We'll
afraid
see.
it's going to.
We'll see.
What about you?
Yeah, I don't think I like it quite as much as It Follows, but it is definitely right next to it. So I will
Mm-hmm.
give it nine meat
9.
suits out of 10.
Yeah, I think this also goes into the elevated horror category, which we are doing a future episode at some point in time. The rest of the elevated horrors that exist, because we watch, the new Scream. Like, all right, we're watching these movies that they consider elevated horror. And I think it's good that we're getting a sequel to it. That hopefully it is just as well put together and produced and everything else like that.
Well, maybe
You know,
Fallen will come out with a sequel, and then we can watch all 3 of the sequels.
there you go. We'll talk to the guy who made Fallen. We'll get that going.
Yeah, the
I'll buy
director
the
is some
rights.
guy I'd never heard of.
Yeah, very true. That's very true. But no, I mean this kind of goes, and this is why Smile was in our top 5 for 2022, and we had a fantastic year of horror movies, of stellar ones in 2022. And this rightfully deserves kind of all the hype that was behind here, because it was a refreshing take in the horror world as well. Anything else before we close this out?
No, that's it for me.
All right, so night to many is terrifying. You never know what's lurking out there. Sometimes it is slow zombies, sometimes fast. But in this case, look to the sky and watch out for comets. Comets. Don't get the creeps, and don't go into the old mortuary, and stay away from demons, because we will be talking the night of, not the living dead, with Night of the Comet, Night of the Demons, just the first one, and Night of the Creeps. I man, I know I've watched all of them, but I cannot tell you all the plot points of all three. It's
I
been a
mean,
while.
yeah, Night of the Comet I've seen often enough to where I'm comfortable with. The other ones I know I've seen, but I don't have any memories of at all.
Yeah, and we'll get into the rest of the Night of Demons series 'cause we know it is a franchise. And there's three more, so that'll be its own special little episode for us.
Yay.
I know you're super excited. But anyway, remember we watch bad movies, so you don't have to. And this has been Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Good night.